Welcome again, everyone, and thank you for joining in with us today. I am again honored to have my friend Ann Fonfa. I will list the link to her interview last week, explaining all of her exceptional advocacy work that she's been doing on behalf of all of us. Incidentally, just last week, I was invited to participate as an advocate in a 2-day FDA conference on basically was maximum tolerated dose. And what can we do to change that? Because if you're unfamiliar with a clinical trial, usually the phase 1 trial is for safety and to establish the dose. The discussion last week, which Ann and I are going to talk about, was changing the paradigm from maximum tolerated dose, which is referred to as MTD, to optimum tolerated dose, which means that in a clinical trial, phase 1, we'd be looking for basically whatever we are looking to prove. Why can't we dial it back to, and also what I learned last week in this, which I don't want to get too far ahead because I want Ann to comment, was that there were many oncologists that were in the audience, and they were saying that when they have a patient that's very ill with a weak immune system, they never give the patient the maximum tolerated dose. What they do is they dial it back, and they often go back into the research and look at the investigators' notes to see when was the first positive outcome found from that drug. And then, obviously, if the patient is okay, they can then move forward. There was also a patient advocate who spoke and said, hey, listen, she had stage 4 lung cancer. I was on the maximum dose, and my quality of life was so poor that I felt I couldn't take the drug. And with an honest discussion with my oncologist, we dialed it back. And she said, we've dialed it in half, actually, and I'm keeping my cancer stable. It's not having the effect like it was before of no evidence of disease, but I'm happy with stable if I can live my life and not be sick all the time.
Oh, so important.
So anyway, Ann, a segue to you. So what do you think about that?
That is so powerful. That's more or less exactly why it's a terrible idea. And I came to it because the Cancer Letter, which is a publication about research and things going on in the community, of April 29th, had an article about dose reduction. And it said that the FDA could request dose finding studies and post-marketing requirements, but they really don't. I mean, that's my opinion. They really don't. They do, but it could take them years and years and years to actually get them. Something's wrong with that. So the maximum tolerated dose means you'll suffer the most, as this person testified to. And what's its value? It was conceived of over 25 years ago. And as I'm going to speak about on other parts, that's time for medicine to make a change. Let's accept new data, new information, new ideas, and change that. The maximum tolerated dose, what's the point? Yeah, you want to kill some mice and then we'll go ahead with everything? It doesn't make sense. It's not meaningful. It's not helpful. And if you look at studies, you can often see if they have dose A, dose B, and dose C, it's the middle dose that's more impactful. It's almost never the highest dose. And those doses, the highest doses, yield the most harms. And most of those harms, or many of those harms, could last for a long time. In fact, possibly the rest of your life, which may or may not be shorter. It's hard to know, but it's a big mistaken direction. I'm glad that we're covering it because I feel like it's just so bad. And, it reminds me, back in the 1990s, the drug Herceptin came out, and there was a lot of talk about it. And then there were doctors who were grabbing onto it. And those doctors became thought leaders, and that was really cool. And one of them, who was a thought leader, came to speak at SHARE in New York City, where I was a member of. SHARE is a self-help group for people with breast, ovarian, and now endometrial cancer. So he was talking about Xeloda, capecitabine, and he said, doctors in the know won't give it at the full dose, which is 1250 twice a day, right? So I said to him, well, when you say that, are you suggesting there are doctors who don't know? And he said, oh yeah, of course. So people were getting 2,500 a day way too much immediate neuropathy that was almost incurable. And it wasn't necessary. So many famous doctors, including Debu Tripathi, who's a very, very well-known oncologist, he went down to 1,800 a day. Most of them went to 2,000 a day. And that difference from the maximum tolerated dose down to 2,000 or even 1,800 a day changed everything. And it made the drug impactful instead of a terrible idea. So, and that, so the famous researcher Musa Mayer, some of your audience may know her. She wrote a book called Advanced Breast Cancer. She was the first person to raise the issue that there even was advanced breast cancer. Metastatic was never discussed in the 90s. It just wasn't. And she and I were at a meeting, and someone from the FDA was here, I forget who. And we said to this woman, why don't we change the dose? I mean, this is terrible. And she said, oh, the sponsor has to resubmit. They have to do a new study. So this is going to play into the next discussion we have. But what sponsor wants to spend another $20 million to prove that their drug needs to be taken less, because less drug, less money? I mean, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, we all know that cancers can get smarter and they can be drug resistant. So maybe if the person is stable, but then the disease progresses, they could increase the dose of that drug. Maybe. Do you think that's a possibility, or would they have to go to something completely different?
They've tried dose dense and things like that. It's not really impactful enough, and the harms are huge. I mean, once you've already been harmed from a drug, it's very hard to take it again or try it at a different level in general. I mean, maybe if they thought about it up front, that would work. I don't know. I'm not scientific enough, and we can't really say that. But this leads to the idea of who controls research, who pays for research and funding. The most funding, obviously, comes from pharma, and then the NIH, National Cancer Institute, division of NIH, but also NIH in general. And funders, they make a lot of decisions. So we really need to get the corporations to change their point of view, and that's really problematic. I mean, I've been in meetings where I discussed another issue that's always troubled me, which is the harms are not discussed. There's always a presentation of the wonderful, fantastic ability of this drug. It's going to do this, that, and the other thing, but no discussion about the harms. It's very, very recent that harms are actually a conversation at any meeting. And luckily, ASCO's picked up on that. But I'm not happy with the way they've decided to go forward. For example, there were 3 years where they held symposia, I don't know where to go with that, 3 different years of a symposium on survivorship. And they were talking, researchers were presenting, oh, this harm happened, that harm happened. And we were like, wow, this is amazing. Their final outcome at the 3rd meeting was to decide a new division of oncology, which now exists and everyone knows about it, called cardio-oncology, because so many people had damage to the heart from the various toxic chemotherapies and regimens they were taking. Now, following people after the harm, you ask yourself, I ask myself constantly, where is the protection come in? Where's the prevention? Where's the reduction of harms? There's no reduction. There's just saying, we acknowledge the harms and we're going to follow you. We can't cure you, so we're going to follow you. But had they said, oh, we should step in really early and try to intervene, but because there are no pharma drugs, and I really believe there are things in the natural world that would help, but that's not discussed.
They can't patent it. Right. They can't patent it. So they're
left hanging. It's wrong.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting too, this advocate that was in the meeting last week, she made a point too about exactly what you're talking about the harms. And she said, I go into my oncologist's office and he said to me, you look great. And she said, okay, here's his impression. And then she had a little chart with herself and she said, well, you may think I look great, but I have diarrhea, headaches, neuropathy, and she's saying, I'm not saying I'm not willing to have that, to have my life, but maybe I don't need to have all this. Is there a way that we can work together to improve these side effects? And he was, she was really dynamite speaker, but they don't think about that. They don't say you don't go in and they don't say to you, how is your quality of life?
Yeah.
And that's, I'm sorry.
That's really serious and it's a big issue and it's continuing. I mean, I started talking about complementary medicine, which is stuff that might reduce from the natural world, that might reduce those toxicities. I call them harms. I don't call side effects. They're not on the side. They're actual effects. We don't like them. We push them to the side, but that's not real. They are the
Right.
effects. And sometimes they affect more people than the actual help, which is
Yeah.
another issue. So complementary therapies, the key thing about it is if you do it in addition, along with, which is what the word complementary means. It's spelled with an E, which is the part that says it goes along as a complement to whatever else you're doing. And it may make a difference. And there are lots of studies for that. But again, back to the control of research, they're never huge studies. They're never the kind of studies that doctors look at, which is multi-centered randomized clinical trials, because 25-40 million dollars for something that can't be patented, as pharma has told me a million times, and we can't patent that, as though that were the end of the story. But we, the patient community, we got to care, we got to worry about this, we got to try and make a difference. And that's what I've tried to do all during my advocacy, is say, hey, there are some simple things that would work. And the more that you find out about them, the more interesting they are. And the studies by now, I mean, I was diagnosed 29 years ago looking for this stuff. And now 29 years later, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more studies. And it still hasn't penetrated enough. Now, people have said it over the years, I told my doctor what I'm doing. Doctor said, oh, don't do that. Or some doctors say, oh yeah, keep doing what you're doing, but don't really tell me about it. Or some doctors will say, oh, that's really interesting. Let's talk about what you're doing. Maybe I can help some other patients. But the medical community is very strict. They're trained by pharma and they're really supposed to stay within the guidelines. And when they color outside the line, they can get in trouble. So it takes somebody with some courage, and there's not, and it's big bucks, so they don't want to give up that situation. I understand, but we, the patients, we have to keep on saying there's so much that can be done. It's worth a try. I mean, people who've had acupuncture know they get relief from fatigue, they get relief from nausea. There might be many, many other benefits of acupuncture, but we're not allowed to explore it. And what does insurance cover? Oh, lower back trouble. That's it. And acupuncture and Chinese herbs, which I'm very fond of, have been in use for 6,000 years. That's enough time for people to figure out, oh, it might not be working, or hey, it's really working. That's why we kept it up. And people who've had it can recognize the benefits. It's not the only treatment that's beneficial. I like to say there are so many paths to wellness, and that's one of them, but there are a lot more. And,
that would be a good title for our sessions, Paths to Wellness. I like that name. I'm going to write that down.
Right. Good. And, so insurance is an issue. The people I talk to who are using dietary supplements or acupuncture, it's all out of pocket. And that can add up really quick,
Yeah, supplements are expensive. I know. I see my monthly credit card bill. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very frustrating because they may be keeping us alive, but we can't show it. The doctors don't understand. I mean, when I'm now dealing with, as your audience may recall, follicular lymphoma, diagnosed in 2019. And my hematologist said to me right up front, Chinese herbs, that's not going to work. And I said, well, A, when I had breast cancer, it worked. And B, it's working so that I'm having no harms from the treatment you're giving me, which I read, I can read the harms are available. Look at drugs.com and you can see what the harms are, still called side effects, but I don't call them that. And it'll list what they are. I had none of them. The Chinese herbs protected me. So is it magical? No, because if you were in China and you were getting Western medicine, which most of them choose to do, that's the thing, they also go to the herbal hospital on the way home and pick up their herbs. And they make their herbs as a tea, like I do, and protect themselves from the harms of the treatment. And that's a lot better. I mean, why not? But our system just doesn't seem to allow for it. It's a bummer to me.
Well, I've thought I'm Ned right now.
Good.
I don't take that for granted, but I'm so afraid to stop what I'm doing because I've been doing it for 12 years. And my husband will say, do we really need all this? And I'm like, well, I don't know what to throw out because everything I have is proven to help. So I don't, and it's just, and with no guidance, it's really, really rough. One other topic that came up in this FDA conference last week, which I've been wrestling with, is that when you enter a clinical trial, oftentimes patient A doesn't really get an effective dose because you're starting with something that's never been tested in humans before. So it may take a few increases in the drug to get non-efficacy doesn't go in phase one to get a positive result. And I always felt like, what about poor patient number one? Okay, she's put her life out there, and I was told, no, 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 you can't go back, and because you've got to follow her for 5 years. Well, in the meeting last week, they are actually what they are calling inpatient dose adjustment. So if I'm in a clinical trial and let's say patient 4 is found that the drug is working based on her immune response, then why can't patient number 1, 2, and 3 then get the benefit from that?
So you're talking about trials that have to be adjusted as they go
Right,
along, and
right.
there is a movement for that as well. Most trials are not like that. However, to your point, if you've ever been at meetings where they introduce their best patient, generally that's the first person who took the treatment. Those people have the mind and the body working on the same page. And obviously, our minds have much more power than we're
Right.
able to figure out.
Right.
And I know personally at least 5 women and maybe some men who have been the first in a clinical trial, and tremendous benefit. I mean, unbelievable compared to all the others in the trial. And it's fascinating. But, one of the issues that struck me long ago, there was a study years and years ago, and they're still happening. It showed that people, even in phase 1 trials, were doing other things. Now, I don't know what the other things were. The researchers didn't even ask that, but that might mean complementary treatments. They even did that. They knew that in some HIV study where a drug was approved that probably shouldn't have been, because so many people were doing something else. There used to be what they call the buyers club, and that was giving supplements to people so that they could stay healthier. And so that's tricky. But the first patient often benefits a lot, so you don't actually have to feel bad for them. They get an extraordinary mind benefit. There's so much attention to them, and they're so cared about and cared for, and it's extraordinary when you think that can make the difference. If only we could bottle that, have a drink in the morning. Everybody's thoughts for you, really good ones, yay, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So the first time that I went to my hematologist office, which was a year and a half ago, in December 2021. Who can keep track? Anyway, whatever day it was. So I had talked to the hematologist, we met in person once, and I said to her, I have chemical sensitivity. It's precluded me using chemotherapy, and I would like to discuss lowering the dose. I would like you to try a half dose for me on day 1. And she said, okay, we can do that. She didn't love it, but she said, okay. And when I got to the clinic for the first treatment, it turned out she was on vacation. I'm sure some of your listeners have had this experience. You meet a great doc and they go on vacation. So she went on vacation, and this male doctor came out. I was in the chair. Nothing had happened so far. And he stood over me, and 3 nurses came around, and he said to me, really angry, we can't do that dose. That's not a legitimate dose. We have to do the full dose. And then I said, no, well, I made this deal with the doctor, and she said a half dose. And he said, oh, if you do that, you're going to die. So I got up. I said, I'm going to die. I'll go home. So I went home. I mean, if I'm going to die, I'd rather be home. When I went home, they called me back 2 hours later. We're going to do the plan as discussed. So I went back and got the treatment, and it was okay. But it reminded me of the fact that they use that a lot. They tell you when you're going to die, and lots of people die when they tell them to. Very sad. And
self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
No one should be able to tell you. I mean, people ask, Doc, how much time do I have? A doc should say, how the hell do I know? Because that's the correct answer. Nobody knows. I mean, how many people do we know who are told they're going to die in 6 months and they're 15 years later?
Right.
But I also have friends who said, oh, Doc, I just want to make it through Christmas. And my friend died on Christmas morning with that plan. I still feel terrible about it. It's very, very painful. But that happens all the time. And people tell me, Doc told my grandfather he had 2 months and he died, right, 2 months, or they die in 2 weeks or whatever. But no one should tell you that, because they don't control it, and they shouldn't control it, because we're suggestible in the same way that being the first patient is fabulous, and being told you're going to die at a certain time, you could believe it. It's problematic. We can't have that. No more death sentences. And they shouldn't use that at all. And this doc telling me I was going to die from doing it my way, I was like, ridiculous and unfair. And I don't talk to him when I see him in the clinic, because I would give him a mouthful, but I'm not gonna.
Well, the other thing is that when you give him that sort of a prognosis, a lot of people just give up and say, okay, well, I guess I better get my affairs in order, and because some people don't have the emotional support to say, oh no, not me. I'm going to do everything I can to stay on this earth. And it's, yeah, you're right. No doctor should ever tell you that. That's just
Yeah,
terrible.
and you're right. People really take it to heart and they really will obey. And that's terrible. It's not what we want. So it's something to avoid. Don't ask your doctor a question like that and don't accept their answer. I mean, I was told I had stage 4 in 1997, and I said to the doctor, I don't know who you're talking to.
Mm.
And a second doctor said the same thing. And I said, I really don't think you're talking to me. Well, as it turned out, and I didn't realize they were supposed to do tests to tell you if you're stage 4, and nobody did. 2 doctors, no tests. I didn't listen. Literally, my brain just said, no, not me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was lucky because I was lucky. Let's just leave it at that. And
Well,
okay, so
it goes back to the fact that the doctor is not God. Whatever your belief is with the universe or whatever, that the doctor has no control over the universe. So he cannot tell you that this is the way it's going to be.
right,
But,
exactly.
yeah,
I agree. I
yeah.
agree. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, and we mentioned with each other, was the way research papers are written. They can be very complicated, and sometimes I feel when I read them, and I was trained as you were to read
Mhm.
papers and to try to understand them. But I sometimes feel like by the time they get down to the methods, and the methods are a certain way, and then they'll say this happened, that happened, and then the conclusion does not seem to match what happened in the trial. And I've been told that there are studies that show that the title sometimes doesn't match what happened, and it's confusing. It's hard enough for people like us, the patient population, to understand the studies, but they make it in such complex languages and in such tricky ways. And it's just too complicated. And it's very, it fries your brain, and it shouldn't have to, because we would like to know what's going on. And sometimes, very often, when I post onto our Facebook page for Annie Appleseed Project, I write an explanation of what I thought they were trying to say, because they didn't say it in a meaningful way, in an understandable way. What's the point of that? But researchers don't question each other very much. You go to meetings, you've heard them say, they'll stand up and they say, oh, that was an elegant presentation. And
Right.
really, they're not critical in a way that might be helpful to people. Whereas when it's an audience with a lot of patient advocates, there's many questions. And one of my least favorite things, and I'm sure yours too, I used to actually hold up a sign occasionally, but a doctor or a researcher will be talking about, they'll say the patient failed the treatment.
Mm.
So no patient ever failed anything. The treatment failed to give the patient what they were expecting from it.
Right.
That's not a failure of the person. And it's so insulting. And, at one meeting, there were parents, a couple who'd lost their daughter. And the mother said, well, my daughter failed the treatment. And I literally started to cry. And I jumped up and I yelled out, your daughter didn't fail anything. They failed her. It was just
Right.
terrible.
Right.
The language they use protects them and it harms us. That's harmful in my mind, totally.
Well, I know that having done the DoD reviews like you have, and we always get the layman's abstract we were talking about, and sometimes they just basically cut a paragraph out of the main abstract and try to sort of put simpler language in, but it doesn't explain what they're doing. And it's so frustrating because then you have to go and research it on your own, which you should do, research it on your own. But like, I don't know why they can't find a better way of communicating. And, that's again where the importance of the patient advocates, because like I'm not going to give specifics, we're not allowed to, but let's say in the trial, they're saying, well, weekly blood draws. Well, is that really necessary that patient needs to come in every week? Can you think of the patient? They're trying to live a normal life and work and so forth. So little things like that they're like, well, no, but we just want to know. And it's like, well, do you really need to know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very casual because mice don't complain. So when it goes up to the people level,
Right.
we
Yeah.
have the right to complain. We have to. And
Right.
it's a big frustration. For your audience, I just want to say DOD is the Department of Defense.
Oh,
And they
sorry.
have a breast cancer research program, as well
Right.
as many other programs that they do research on. And it's for the community, and advocates, they call consumers, are always present for the discussion, at least 2 on every panel. And we are supposed to report from our perspective. We're not expected to be scientists because we're not, but we
Right.
are expected to notice the things you said and the things that a lot of people say, Well, that's too many blood draws. That's too much. Are you sure that another x-rays needed, whatever it is, because they forget we're actual people, not cancer. We're people with cancer, not cancer belonging to,
Mhm.
floating in the universe. And that's an issue, but it's getting better, but it's tricky. It's tricky. Another thing that's always been of tremendous interest to me is, and this happened from the beginning when I first went to my very first FDA meeting, pretty sure about 1994, maybe 95. And the sponsor, which is a drug company, presented information on their drug. And they said there were no unexpected toxicities. And this has haunted me for all those other years since, because how do you look for an unexpected toxicity? You're looking for the ones you know. You're looking for headache, nausea, neuropathy, a whole range of them, but you can't know what else is wrong because you don't know how to look for it. And I think this is not just a cancer issue, this is everything. There's a diabetes issue, it's a high blood pressure issue, it's cardiac. They just don't know where to look if it's unexpected. How can they say there were no unexpected? That's, to me, that's an absolute lie. They can say there were no expected, or the expected were better than we thought they would be, which in my
Mhm.
mind would be a lie too. But they can't, excuse me, they can't say no unexpected, because how do you know? It's the unanticipated, unacknowledged, unaware. It's just not possible, and that's a real bugaboo for me. Um, all
Yeah.
right, so the final thing that I wrote down that I wanted to cover, and this to me is, we talked about patient consent forms. I don't remember. Yeah,
Right.
they're very deep, very confusing. Okay, so when I was diagnosed with cancer in 1993, I was working for a company that produced business presentations. It was done on computer, and every month we had software updates every month. Now, nowadays we all know what software updates are. In the medical field, as we started out by saying, it takes years, maybe 25 years, sometimes 40 years for a change. And it's terrible. I mean, this is a field that should be rapidly changing when new data enters. But there's so many nuances about it and a real frustration. And one of the areas that I noted long ago, which just drives me nuts, I'm a Cochrane consumer reviewer. Cochrane is a worldwide collection of researchers who publish what they consider to be the highest level of evidence, meta-analysis. And they do it in a very standardized way, so everything is done the same way, and you can trust what they come up with. So there was a paper about children. Now, I'm sure everybody knows children are not little adults.
Right.
Adults are big children, but children are not little adults. So
Right.
what's okay for adults cannot be okay for children automatically by any means. So they did this study in children, and what they did was to look at having no water after 8 p.m. for surgery the next day, or water up to 2 hours before surgery. And they discovered that the children were not harmed by having water. They said clear liquid, but I prefer to just say water. It's easier.
Mhm.
And you can look this up on Cochrane.org. It's a library available to everybody. And the results were you could have water 2 hours before surgery. Now, anyone who's ever had surgery knows you go in, you haven't had water since 8 p.m. or midnight or whatever they told you, and you're thirsty, thirsty, thirsty. For me, my surgery was scheduled for 10 a.m., which was great,
Mhm.
but it didn't happen until 2 p.m. So I had 4 extra hours. By the time they tried to do an IV, they couldn't get it in. My veins had shrunk so tiny, because that's what not having water for all those hours, you get dehydrated. I'm sure
Hydrated.
there's
Yeah.
other impactful things that happen that are not good. They're all negative. So this paper's been around for a while, but not the 25 years that it apparently takes before a change. I can't think of one hospital that put this into play. I'm thinking CYA, which is cover your butt. I
Mhm.
feel like the reason they don't make a change is because, hey, this is status quo. It's always been this way. It's easier. We don't want to shake anything up. And what if they sue us? Even though it's healthier for every single patient to have water up to 2 hours before surgery. I mean, it's painfully pathetic. And that's just what I know about. I'm sure I always say to my husband, there's so much I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know. So, if it
Yeah.
comes up on my radar, I'm excited. But
Mhm.
hey, this one is just, to me, nuts. So it's
Yeah.
so wrong.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, unless people speak out about it, they don't intend to change any protocol that they are comfortable with. Basically, the doctors are very comfortable following the standard protocol, and
Yeah.
anything, yeah, anything beyond that. Like when I first went to Dana Farber, I had my list of supplements I was taking, and they didn't want me to take any of them, as you were saying. And the only thing my oncologist said, well, wait a minute, I'm just going to have you meet with the pharmacist because she will. At the time, they didn't have a lot of facilities they have now where they have actually nutritional counseling and supplement
Right.
counseling. Anyway, the only thing she would agree with me on was the turmeric. And I said, well, I'm taking the rest of them because, I've done my own research and I think it's not going to hurt me, so you say no harms. And they said, okay, just don't tell us, just, just don't tell us. But
Yeah, that's
why,
good.
why don't they want to know? Like you said,
Yeah.
before, wouldn't they think if, and vitamin D, she agreed on the vitamin D, but why does it take literally an act of Congress to say, some of these things have been proven to help and not hurt, and maybe you should think about them.
Yeah, and it's really poignant because there are so many harms from conventional treatment,
Hmm.
radiation too, not just chemotherapy. And there's so many harms, and they're ignoring that, and it's really wrong. But the part that's the worst is when a doctor just says no, don't do anything. And I have said to people, ask your doctor what the evidence is for saying no. It's
Hmm.
not based on evidence. They're saying shorthand version of, I don't really know a damn thing about that, so don't do it. But that's incorrect. It's about you, not about them. And
Right.
could they go to the internet and find out something? I bet they could go to pubmed.gov, Library of Medicine, and they could see a study on resveratrol, and they could see, oh yeah, it's been pretty helpful. Probiotics, yeah, hey, go for it. But they don't. So they're taking away your rights by not knowing stuff they should know and that is available. It's knowable. It's not like, oh my God, I had to go to Europe on a Sunday to find out. Yeah, you don't. You go to Library of Medicine, pubmed.gov, and you can find out anything you want. And there's lots and lots and lots of research. It's torture. I asked my hematology group, they do blood work every time I go, which I'm sure is a standard. And I say to them, while you got the IV in, want vitamin C, give me IV vitamin C. And they go, oh, I can't do that. Why not? Why not? Why
Hmm.
not? It's a known thing. They can't do it. So, and they also have a habit. I will say to them ahead of time, please send them a note. Please make sure I get a vitamin D test. And they take an extra vial of blood, and then I don't get the results. And they say, "Oh, well, that's not in our scope. You have to go to a separate lab." So I said, "Well, A, why didn't you tell me? And B, why did you take the blood? And
Right.
C, I'll pay for the damn test. I need it. I don't want to get another blood draw. I mean, I have lymphedema on the left arm, so we don't get any blood on the left side. I mean, do anything only on the right side. So your veins get pretty darn tired, and
Hmm.
they're not, it's too casual. It's just not respected, not understood. I complain to them every single time because I want them to remember. Yeah, maybe they remember that one patient really complains, but I want them to be aware that a human being is getting those pokes. And if it takes 3 pokes to get your blood every time you go, I mean, what? It's
Right.
terrible.
Right.
I also think there should be a new way to do blood. It should not be the same old, same old. It's horrendous. And I said to her, when you blow every vein in my right arm, what's next? Do we do my neck? Do we do my leg? They went, oh, no, no. So, well, it's going to happen. You're headed in that direction. 3 pokes every time. If I'm lucky, it's only 2 pokes and a very rarely one. But I'm
Well,
not alone in this, and I know that.
no, I know. And the thing is, too, it would almost seem, now that we're talking about this, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have utopia where every oncology hospital team had someone assigned, maybe not a full oncologist, maybe a medical student that has to report on the latest findings to the doctor on a weekly basis so that they're saying, we don't have time to read all that stuff. Well,
Yeah.
okay, but you should be responsible for knowing. So if they had someone that's what their job was, and to say, put out, I'm just thinking as we're talking, I'm not basing that on anything in reality, but would that be a wonderful thing if that could be a part of the future?
Yeah, it's good sounding idea, and
Mhm.
a lot of the hospitals now have integrative departments, which is very cool,
Right.
but it's not covered by insurance. So you have to pay out of pocket if you want to see the nutritionist, and everybody does. It's mean, it's just mean. When the division starts out, they have charity funding. They fundraise and they start out, but after a while, it just reverts to, oh, the patient will pay, but insurance doesn't cover that. It's inconceivable that insurance should not cover a nutrition visit for a cancer patient,
Mhm.
because that everyone has heard the usual. I'm sure you got the same thing. The usual is, oh, well, have anything that you want. Just make sure you keep your weight up. And,
Right.
ice cream will be great. Well, P.S. Somebody wrote it recently that having ices in their mouth was good for something, but it's not good in general. It's the wrong fat and it's too sweet. So this reminds me that there was another article that recently appeared talking about how they're recognizing that certain fats are good for your heart and certain fats are not. So the Women's Health Study did less fat, but they never said what the good ones were. So they let people pick the type of fat they wanted. I protested at the time. I was a patient advocate and I was able to say something at the time. They were introducing the idea of this study. And I said, you really ought to separate the good fats from the unhealthy fats. They didn't want to do that. So imagine if they did a new women's health study where they made it based on actually healthy items as opposed to just random, fats, because there is a difference. And anytime you've taken any kind of nutrition education, that there's some stuff that's good and some stuff that's bad. And these are not secrets. It's well
Right.
known. And my organization has stuff on our website about it. Put it on our Facebook page. Lots of other groups have it. Um, uh, I
Give a
forgot
lot
the
of
new name for Lance Armstrong's Live
monosaturated.
Strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Really
And
strong.
there's,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, olive oil's fab,
Mm.
flaxseed oil, you can't heat it. Hemp oil, you can't heat it, but, avocado oil. There's plenty of things. Avocado is a very healthy fruit.
Right. I eat it every day.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
jokingly called it a vegetable, but it's a fruit, just like
Yeah.
tomatoes are a fruit. And
Yeah.
but that oil would be healthy. And the women's study didn't take that into account. It
Right.
didn't do as good as it could. But I'm sure you know this. The subset of people who did the best were the ones with triple negative. That
Mm.
should be front page news because they
Right.
benefited the most and in real terms. But that got lost because, hey, it's food. Pharma doesn't care about food. And
Hmm.
it's sad. I mean, it's problematic because it's very obvious the things that are lifestyle for triple negative are the most helpful. I mean, being physically active helps everybody, but it particularly helps people with triple negative. Eating a healthier diet helps triple negative the most. And it's been shown in studies, but because it's a subset, it's not the main focus of the trial. It doesn't get front page news, but it should be. And then the docs in the complementary and alternative world who work on mind body, they've said for years, our work impacts more people than any drug ever on the market. Learning to reduce learning to handle stress and relax helps more people and keeps more people alive than almost any drug, but it's ignored also. I remember quoting that years ago from a famous guy who's now gone. But it's important that all these things be incorporated into our plan so that we don't have to talk about all these negative things that are going wrong endlessly. We should be able to boost people up. They should have options, and they should know what their options are. Should be at the doctor's office. They should just hand you the information right away. Make some dietary changes. You can do it. It's like when you see a cardiac surgeon, a cardiac doc, and you smoke. And doc thinks, well, this person's never going to quit, so I won't even mention it. It's a bad thing to decide ahead of time. Well, it happens with clinical trials all the time. The doc says, well, that person's never going to, they won't follow through. It's not worth putting them on the trial. And so that leaves out a whole bunch of people, including seniors like myself. And that's ridiculous. We do trials for people who are very, 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 very healthy, the healthiest people within the subset of people with cancer in our group in trials. And so then it gets out into the world, and you and your doctor, and I have a comorbidity, I have chemical sensitivity. My sister has diabetes, she doesn't have cancer, knock on wood, but that's actually morbid. But point being, they don't take that into account. And then you go out into the world, you have to one-on-one with your doc work out how are you going to use that drug? Well, doc, we don't have any clue how it would work with someone with diabetes. And a lot of people have diabetes in our country. Well, we don't know how it's going to work with high blood pressure. A lot of people have high blood pressure. What? We don't have a clue because the trial was done. The inclusion and the exclusion created the healthiest people only could be accepted to the trial. Now, there's a lot of talk about changing that, but has it changed? I don't think so. And that's something that's been going on forever. But it's very beneficial to the pharmaceutical company, very beneficial. And I object to that because it should not be about pharma. It should be about us, people with cancer, and it's not.
Well, one of the reviews I sat in on, they were talking about hereditary cancer. But the thing is that you could look at someone's genetic biology, but if there's a lot of cancer in one family, are you asking about their diet, their lifestyle? Are they overweight? So you
Where they
can't,
live, where
but
they
where
live
they
when they were
live,
babies.
right? Right. All that is not being, looked at. So when you just say, well, we're going to study this family because they have a high incidence of, let's say, brain cancer. I don't know. This got in discussion with my son last week because of the Palm Beach Acres, where they have a lot of brain cancer, which I read about
Right.
last week. I was
Right.
horrified.
They
Yeah.
had a Pratt and Whitney um,
Right.
factory during World War II, and
Mm-hmm.
they dumped everything out into the soil.
Benzene.
I can't remember the location either. I'm very bad with
Yeah.
names, but Pratt and Whitney came to mind immediately. Oh, it's something with the acres, and
Mm-hmm.
children were getting brain tumors at a massive rate. It's a cluster, and
Mm-hmm.
they can always explain it away, but they shouldn't. They
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't. So apropos of people with hereditary, that's a very small percentage of the people who get cancer of any kind. It's but there's even studies that show that people with in mutations, inheritable mutations, benefit from lifestyle changes because epigenetics, which is the science of how you can impact your own life with what you do, and it's always the same. It's what you eat, and I can
Mm-hmm.
define healthy if people want. It's how physically active you move, and you don't have to be an athlete. You just have to move around. You have to not sit down all day on your butt and do nothing. You gotta take a walk or ride a bike or swim or whatever makes you happier.
Mm-hmm.
And being out in nature is always great. I can look out my window and see a lake and birds, and it's thrilling. And I do a lot of my workouts while looking out at the lake, and it's really cool. And also how you handle stress.
Mm-hmm.
There's more, but those are the big three. And those are what you eat. I mean, if you're not eating real fruit and real vegetables, you're not eating. So people try to argue with me, well, I'm a vegan, I eat a lot of fruit and vegetables. And I say, okay, organic, because if you're not eating organic whenever you can,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting tons of pesticides, and pesticides, as we know, are cumulative in our fat cells. And where are most fat cells? Oh, they're in the breast. Well, ho, ho, ho. That's, one reason. And they're hormonally related. So prostate, breast, testicular, and ovarian on the rise worldwide because we're pesticide out. We got pollutants galore, and they gather in our fat cells. So the best way to avoid that is to eat whatever you can that's organically grown. And that means grown without pesticides. And as you know, the EWG.org, Environmental Working Group, has lists of the most sprayed and the least sprayed. And once you see what's sprayed, you shouldn't eat it. I mean, strawberries, I adore strawberries. I've loved them ever since childhood. And when you see there's 4 horrible chemicals that are sprayed on strawberries, and then would you eat that? So I don't. I only eat organic. And it's my opinion, I probably said this the last time we talked, instead of certifying organically grown, we should be certifying what wasn't organically grown. And there should be a sign in every supermarket right in front of the fruit or vegetable you're picking that shows you how many things were sprayed on the food you're about to buy. And you could say, like I would, oh my gosh, I definitely don't want that. I want the one with nothing in it as much
No,
as
that would be a really interesting discussion for us to look up all the chemicals that are on the Dirty Dozen, and to publish that would be amazing, or talk about that on a show, because I in particular can't seem to get enough people to understand the importance of eating organic. I mean, if you buy organic, period. And I don't eat meat, but my husband does, and I'll only eat pasture raised. It's not the best thing, but it's what he'll eat. So
yeah.
still, people don't, because it's expensive.
Yeah, but you're worth
Yeah.
it.
You're going to pay the doctor, or you're going to pay the supermarket, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's education and awareness. But I really feel if a list of the crap was right there when you were buying the fruit or vegetable, it would give you pause, and you'd have to think about it, and you might not do it because it's so horrendous and so insane. I mean, apples, we're the apple people, and apples are treated so badly. They're just, if you don't get organic apples, it's just terrible. It's
The
terrible.
thing is, you
And
can't see it because they look the same.
yeah,
They'll
that's
look
right.
at it and they'll say they look the same.
Well, I've had the pleasure of sending organic things in the mail to my grandkids, and they give me back, Granny, that was the best cereal I ever had. Tell Dad, buy. And they love organic blueberries, and I don't even know what non-organic tastes because it's been so long. I don't go to a restaurant that doesn't serve healthy food. I don't go out much. Period. Chemical sensitivity and COVID have been a bad combo for me, and
Yeah.
blood cancer. But it's so important. It's so important. You have to weigh what's possible. And it's funny, somebody was saying the other day, McDonald's added salad because that was a healthy option. And it turns out it's like twice the price of the junky option. So what was that? It's terrible. But our government, our USDA and Congress has decided to support meat producers, the cattle ranchers, and so their prices are artificially high, uh, low, excuse me, and fruits and vegetables are high because nobody's supporting them, which is crazy. And as I often joke, who's advertising broccoli on TV? Almost nobody.
Yeah.
Did anybody say, get your fresh fruit today?
Hmm.
No. I mean, just, you just don't hear it, but you see 14 commercials during the course. I mean, I watch HGTV a lot.
I
I
do too. Yeah.
fantasize fixing my house. I never do it. But, you can see they got this fast food and that fast food and this, I try to go buy the commercials if I possibly can, but it's so frustrating. And they're, or like Pepsi, they chose to go with famous musicians and famous singers and dancers, and that's how they, because there's nothing they can say about their product. It's water,
Mhm.
sugar, and poison, so they just
Right.
dance it away, and people love it. And people tell me all the time, "Oh, I can't give up my soda." Okay, well, how about less? Less would be good.
Right.
Less is better for anything. Start with less. That's okay. Less, 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 and avoid added sugar. We all know that. Read your labels. I mean, when I see something that has 14 things and I don't know what they are. Oh, somebody sent me a sale thing for a supplement today, and it was, wow, it looked great. It looked great. And I said, I got to find the ingredients. So I look at the ingredients, and the final ingredients is polysorbate 20, which I know is a preservative, and it's a big time preservative. And I don't eat anything with preservatives.
Hmm.
Thank you very much. I'm well preserved without preservatives,
Yeah.
no artificial color, artificial flavor, additives, and I don't eat anything polysorbate, anything. I'm sorry, that's just not going to my body.
Mhm.
Sodium benzoate doesn't go in my body. None of those things. They are not made for humans. They're made to preserve your food. What? It's made for your food preservation, not your body, soul, mind, spirit, whatever preservation. It's not.
BHA, BHT. I was a doctor 40 years ago because my older son now is 40 and he had a lot of allergies. And we did actually seek a nutritionist in Washington. We were living there at the time. And had I only stuck with his formula for my whole life, I probably wouldn't have gotten breast cancer. But I fell off the wagon there. I always tell people if you don't know what it is and you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be eating it. You and I both know. I mean, I shop at Whole Foods, and it just amazes me. I'll see carts with moms with young kids, and even Whole Foods. You think if you're buying at Whole Foods, it's okay, but it's not really all
Well,
okay. Right,
much of it is not organic. You have to
right,
read the labels.
right.
It's the same with all of them. I mean, Publix down here in Florida has some organic. Generally, it's very old, but they
Mhm.
try. Sprouts just came. I have to read labels. I know I'm chemically sensitive. I know I have to be careful, but everyone should read labels. It tells you exactly what you need to know. Well, I bought it. I bought a health drink from a very well-known doctor, and I thought, oh, this could be really cool. And it comes in a pack of, you have to buy 8 or something like that. So
Mhm.
the first one I had was so sweet. And I called the company. I said, what's going on? It's too much stevia. Okay, well, stevia is not bad for you, but I
Mm.
don't want that flavor. So she says to me, well, put some ginger ale in it. So I said, well,
How
first
is
of all, I
that
don't
gonna?
drink
Right,
ginger ale,
right.
but I had lime juice. So I put some lime juice in. It was better, but it was still too sweet. The whole thing was too sweet. So then I tried the other. They had 3 flavors. They're all so sweet. And I wrote to them and I said, I have this good idea. Less sweetener, and just put a little note on your bottle that says you could add a teaspoon of honey, raw organic honey, if you think you need sweeter. Well, most
Mhm.
people, if that's their sweet tooth in our country, we're screwed. I mean, it's terrible. It was just and I get a headache from sweet. I don't care what the sweetener is. My body's saying, hey, no, 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 no. And so I gave some of it away. I'm giving more of it away. I just can't drink it. It's just too sweet for me. It feels terrible. And,
Well,
and
it
it didn't,
wasn't until I actually started looking at intermittent fasting, just as I was kind of fascinated by the concept, and I didn't realize, I will drink. I make my own iced tea with real tea, and I will put lemon and I put stevia in it. And so, but I was reading this thing on intermittent fasting, and they're saying even your body knows, even though it's not sugar, because you're putting stevia, it's sending a sweet signal to your brain, so you're releasing insulin even
right,
at that
right. I
point.
think so.
Yeah,
I think so. I don't know for sure, but it's to
yeah,
me, I get a headache from
yeah.
sweet. I don't care what it is,
Well,
And
it's
it's
going.
it's sad.
Don't you find though, like now, I haven't had sweet for so long. I'm talking about like a real dessert. I used to be the muffin king. I loved muffins. And like I'll look at a piece of cake now and say, well, I don't really want that. I'd rather have peanut butter on toast, you know? But like don't you I crave more savory, as the British would say.
I
Yeah.
like spicy hot. I
Yeah.
have my green market. I just found a booth that had 9 kinds of hot pepper, and I got one of each. I am ecstatic, just spicing up everything. Yeah, I like spicy better. But I remember the last piece of cake I had. I took a bite and I said to myself, "Do I really want another bite? Because maybe I don't." And then I didn't, and that was it. I didn't have cake anymore because I don't crave sweets anymore, and
Hmm.
that's a good thing because our bodies are just it's too much. They sometimes you hear on the radio or the news, and they say Americans eat 60 pounds of sugar a year, and I'm thinking, well, somebody's got 120 going on in their life because I got none. But
Right.
60 pounds is insane. And it wasn't like that in earlier times. And we say, oh, in the old generation they didn't live that long, but that's not true. If you didn't die as an infant,
Hmm.
you could live a long life. People didn't have, we didn't have cancer everywhere. It just wasn't everywhere. It is now. Ask yourself what's going on in our universe: pesticides, pollutants, diesel engines, everything like that. And they're giving us all sorts of trouble. It's getting worse and worse all over the world. This can't be good. I mean, they have these maps now. They show you where people are their weight has increased every 10 years. They show you the map change. Look at this. Look at this. That's unhealthy too. It's because people are eating bad food and they don't realize it, and their bodies can't deal with it. It's fine if you eat healthy food and you're a big person. I love you. Go for it. But if you're eating junk, garbage in, garbage out, that's what's happening for most of us. And it's really very difficult and very sad. You don't have to be very thin to be healthy. In fact, that's not necessarily healthy. In fact, I don't know if people know this, but half of everybody who gets a heart attack is what they call normal weight. So they're not obese. That's not necessarily an issue, but we make it into an issue. We give people so much agita about their weight, they can't even be healthy because they're always agitated. It's not right.
But
But
the thing about the food though, that the bad food is that it's addictive.
yeah,
It was funny. I was reading a book during COVID. I read a book about the pandemic of 1918, and they showed a picture of men at a baseball game with masks on. And I was thinking, wow, half the people don't fit in those seats in the stadiums.
it's very tough.
Right.
It's very
And
tough.
I mean, you meet a lot of people that are very conscious of a healthy diet, and most of those people, like I don't consider myself thin, but I'm not overweight. If you're eating good food, your body is able to process it.
Right.
When you're giving your body chemicals, it doesn't know what to do with it, so it probably just gets stored as fats, and
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so. And I think what you eat matters so much. To me,
Hmm.
it's everything. And people, and it is financial. It's ridiculous that we have a country in which people are unable to eat healthy food because they can't afford it or they can't find it in their community, which is
Hmm.
even more horrible.
Hmm.
It's well known that in poorer communities there are more bars and more fast food restaurants than anything else, and
Hmm.
that's terrible. And I remember going into supermarkets in those communities and seeing that the prices were much higher than in my community, which was the middle, let's say. And that's terrible. And they're taking advantage in every possible way. It's a pathetic situation, including the program where we feed women and children. We don't feed them anything healthy. That's just not happening. And even food banks. I mean, they're trying harder now. They're trying to get fresh fruits and vegetables, but mostly it's canned and packaged food. That's
Hmm.
what gets donated and that's what they give out. And they can't even try to make it healthier. It's really painful. It's sad. We have all the wrong priorities, in my opinion, in our nation, and it's crazy. There's always a lot of money for war and weapons, and that's sad. You can make small changes, and whatever small changes you can make, they all help. If you need to
Hmm.
take a walk, get out there, do something, breathe the real air. It's starting to be the nice weather. Everyone could do it all throughout the country, and get some movement. And even if you could do nothing, like raise your arms over your head and wiggle your hands over your head. If you're lying down, you're stuck in bed, rotate your ankles. Rotate your ankles. That'll give you some lymph movement, and that's what we need. We need to get the lymph system moving. With
Hmm.
stagnant lymph, which can cause all sorts of other problems, not good. So do whatever you can for as long as you can. And I mean, my husband, he plays ball for a couple hours a day, 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. Not me.
Hmm.
not me. But I do take a walk pretty much every day, and I try to do. I like go up and down the stairs a lot. It's important, we just have to have movement. And,
Well,
food, movement, and handling stress.
I looked at someone's YouTube channel, and this lady, basically her message was get out and walk. It was funny because she was trying to lose weight, but she put out this chart and she said, now, people, when you get started, if you get up and walk to your wash machine, that counts as a walk, right? But to give yourself, you see yourself being conscious of getting up every few minutes and doing something. So I thought it was kind of funny, but it was really interesting. And she said, so I've done 100 walks, and, I've been in the house, but just doing little things that you don't think about rather than sitting in the chair, which is very easy to do because
Yeah.
Newton's law, right? A body at rest wants
When
to
I'm
stay at rest.
when I'm not on a Zoom, I put my water in the other room, so I have to get up and get it when I'm working. But right now, of course, I want it nearby, and I like to take a lot of water. They tell me I have to stay hydrated for blood cancer, so that's what I'm doing, and I'm
Right.
doing the best I can with it.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, it's interesting. I mean, there's so many issues. There's so many more, but those are the issues that we thought of today. And
Yeah.
people can in the future, they can always ask me questions. You can go to my website or Facebook page and find me, and email, or get in touch. I'm happy to answer any questions and give people, find our handouts and get the healthy information.
And we hope that you'll continue to tune in for more wellness tips and discussions on the latest things in breast cancer, and also how to live a healthier life. So thanks for watching.